Affirmations for the Consciousness by Derrick Lee.
By living right, healthy and upright according to creational laws, I don't allow myself to stray or slip into firm or fleeting fads or wrong wishes, yearnings and imaginings, or into desires and the like. This self-control belongs to the ideal way of self-control for which I exercise completely consciously over myself. This self-control also belongs to my thought concentration, which is necessary if the might of my thoughts are to be correctly used and are to be effective. Failing to immediately achieve a life seal often means only a momentary failure, which must necessarily arise because my own errors and weaknesses must first be resolved and overcome. Failures occur because the right way has not been found, or that my effort was not carried out intensively enough or with sufficient concentration or constructively enough. Failing to immediately achieve a life seal often means only a momentary failure. My effort is constantly consciously driven onward while there is a strengthening of all required qualities, as a result of which a new success is guaranteed. Newly gained character strengths become the benchmark of true success for me, and these will form new starting points for future strengths and future triumphs from which new zeal are striven for and fulfilled. I always equip my thoughts with a sense of striving for the fulfillment of my human evolution of responsibility. My thoughts are concentrated on a flawless carrying out of my creationally given obligation. Only by gathering and focusing my thoughts into a useful striving for a setting of its seal can a resoluteness also arise for following through and for the achievement of the zeal. No achievement of its seal can be attained without forward and backward steps, without failures and successes. On my way of setting of a zeal, and on the path of effort for achieving the zeal, there are steps which lead forward, or backwards again for a distance, because an achievement of its seal is inevitably also bound with learning, and with learning errors must, in turn, inevitably be made, because this is the way of the evolution. Through my making of errors, consequently, new results and new successes become evident. I accept only those errors which serve evolution, and therefore also errors which are inevitably bound up with the achievement of the zeal, because the setting of its seal effectively also indeed represents an evolutive zeal. I make use of the circumstances of my failure so that I become discerning and strong and knowing in my thinking in order to stride fearlessly towards my evolution, determinations and future, with constant efforts to achieve mastery in the forming and management of my thoughts. I rigorously exclude anxiety and doubt because they are evil elements of disintegration which are able to break or bend every straight line of every evolutive effort and can make all efforts useless, ineffective, and can ruin them. Explanation: anxious and doubtful thoughts never lead to progress and success. Consequently, nothing which has a positive value can ever be achieved as a result of them, rather, at all levels, only that which is negative. Hence a quote from Billy Edward Albert Meyer is in order, which states, "I always remain relaxed and therefore gain might over myself. Anxiety and doubt are as negative as hate, unpeace, absence of honor, unfairness and dishonesty, and so forth, because they always lead to failure and a loss in some form. 184 My will to act is anchored in my knowledge, in the knowledge that I can always do and not do what I like. I overcome my anxiety and doubt and thereby also overcome my failures in regard to myself and regarding the life and the environment. Now that anxiety and doubt are overcome, and my world of thoughts are directed at confidence, constructiveness, health, and success, then every thought is connected with such a power that it becomes the realizing might, which absolutely nothing at all can resist. I bravely confront all difficulties and overcome them by means of my knowledge and by means of my wisdom. My evolution, and with that also the sense of life, are fulfilled. Consequently, knowledge, lived practical experience, and wisdom can continue to bloom and form fruit which no longer prematurely falls to the ground and rots. My healthy positive thought, which is fearlessly held and formed and is clearly created, and is connected with an effectively valuable life seal, is the creating power, the creative might which can, in fact, no longer be countered by any opposition. This knowledge I have made on my own, and I am always ready to turn towards that which is higher and is more evolutive, and thereby develop myself to a higher degree. I no longer have any senselessly wandering thoughts or uncontrollably fluctuating feelings which could throw me off track. Everything that I am able to achieve is the outcome of my thoughts and the outcome of my resulting efforts, or of unachieved efforts, which are brought to fruition by means of the might of my thoughts. I am responsible for the maintenance of my consciousness-based balance. My consciousness-based balance and the resulting mental and feeling balance are together in order, in agreeance, and are equalized. Therefore, my responsibility is observed, followed, and fulfilled. The entire circumstances of life, which are individually related to my psyche as well as to my character, morality, and personality, belong as a product created by myself. Joy, sorrow, love, and hate, as well as all other things by which the human being is controlled, come solely from my own inner nature. I form myself by means of my thoughts. Consequently, I become, and am just the way I think. And if I change my thinking, then I become just as I think in the future, and I handle and form everything from this thinking. I never allow myself to be bewitched, impressed, or persuaded by external influences which would oppress my own will and self-responsibility. 192. My own will is free from oppression and is not dependent on external influences. 194. I maintain neutral, positive, equalized thoughts and react, and behave constructively, in order to be progressive in my might. I am free from the contents of all negative and destructive thoughts. I dissolve and eliminate my selfishness and immoderateness in order to discover and develop my latent resources, thereby real, healthy, and positive determinations and endeavors I create and bring to fruition. I nurture my thoughts in a conscious and controlled kind and wise. I tend, in a conscious and controlled form, to the bringing about of my setting of a zeal and the fulfilling of it. The very rudder of my life is in my hands, and my thoughts are formed in a conscious and controlled way. My thoughts are free and open, creative, positive, and constructive, and indeed in a form which is conscious, which sets zeal and which brings zeal to fruition. My life always forms according to my thoughts, which are chosen, tended, and nurtured. I do not see errors as hindering my success and evolution, because only through them do success and progress come about, and indeed as a result of them being recognized, understood in their structure, and resolved, leads to the expansion of my knowledge and progress, and also my ability to avoid making similar or different errors, mistakes.
Explanation. Excerpt from page 96. MOTT. Making mistakes, therefore brings forth cognition. Cognizance, knowledge, practical experience, and living experience, which all together ultimately forms into wisdom, in which ability is also an important factor.
I always make an effort to recognize my errors, to understand them in their structure, and also to resolve them. 200. My errors can be manifold and exist in forms which are conditioned by my thoughts and feelings, and thereby also by my psyche. The higher I raise my positive, healthy, good, creative, and constructive thoughts, and tend and nurture them in an equalized form, the more successful, upright, progressive, and righteous I become. My good, positive, and idealistic values and endeavors which are worth bringing to fruition also increase, from which finally success is achieved as well as lasting accomplishments. I advantage or disadvantage myself in every form when factors which arise from the might of my thoughts are concerned. 202.
Excerpt from page 2002. MOTT explanation. The human being himself, herself advantages or disadvantages himself, herself in every form when factors arise from the might of his or her thoughts are concerned. And exactly this has nothing to do with an honest, unjust human beings being able to acquire material mights and will, and so forth, for themselves. Truthfully, in spite of their might and their material wealth, such human beings are poor and are losers throughout the line of their evolution. They are actually namely devoid of all those values which constitute the quality of being human, and which determine the real inner happiness, as well as the true love, and the inner freedom, and the equalized harmony.
I work incessantly to become more virtuous and discerning of the truth and to becoming a true human being. I creatively and constructively engage in visions, dreaming and fantasies because it is effectively the dreamers, visionaries and fantasizers, as well as those most enthusiastic about their evolution who are the saviors of the world. I invisibly carry the humanity evolutely forward and bring forth knowledge, wisdom, humanness, and the state of being human in the true sense, but also the formation of personality, morality, and character, as well as uncountable intellectual and material achievements. The visible world is carried and caused to evolve by the invisible powers of the universe and thereby by the creation. I myself also live by these powers, but in a broader sense, also by means of myself and my own creativity. My visions, my dreaming, cognitions, and fantasies are always tended and nurtured, because in them lies the origin of creativity and constructiveness. 212. I never disregard my positive ruminations, visions, fantasies, and dreaming. Rather, I always make an effort with these and nurture them. All good, healthy, pure, and positive ideals I nurture, as well as harmonious music, beauty, love, peace, and freedom. My visions and fantasies are imaginings and wishes which I realize and achieve by means of my striving. My imaginings and wishes allow me to progressively think, act, and create. In regard to education, knowledge, wisdom, love, peace, and the forming of my character, morality, and personality, I am progressive as well as in regard to material values of all kinds. I always search out ideals, imaginings, and wishes for which I strive for and achieve in order to form myself in my inner self and external self. I always nurture elevated dreaming, ruminations, visions, and fantasies which are enlivened by wishes and imaginings. I am balanced in my inner self as well as my external self, thereby both the internal and external simultaneously I consider and progressively form. By means of my own power and by means of the power and ideals of others, I am one with my ideals, imaginings, and wishes. Whether my imaginings and wishes are low or high, or are a mix of the two, I am always attracted by and bring to fruition that which I consciously or secretly love and strive for. That which comes into my hands is always the precise product of that which my own thoughts create. I always receive that which I actually earn, no more, no less. With every human being as well as my own undertakings, the might of my thoughts is the decisive point which leads everything to become reality, regardless of whether it is in negative and bad form or positive and good form. Successes and results are never a matter of so-called chance, or a foreordination of an unjustified nature, and so forth. My own powers are the product of my own efforts. In regard to the setting and achievement of the zeal, stands or falls as a result of the might of my thoughts. Purely intellectual possessions, as well as purely consciousness-based and spiritual possessions, are the fruits of my achieved efforts. These possessions are the fruits of the thoughts which are just as complete in themselves as they are in their effects, when everything is brought to fruition by means of the might of my thoughts. It is indisputable that all things which I am able to create by means of visions, ruminations, and fantasizing are made real, or can be made real, by means of the might of my thoughts. The rumination, the vision or the fantasy, the ideal, which I mentally create by means of my consciousness, determines my life, because that which I tend and nurture as an ideal is important for the life. Way, the circumstances of life, and the evolutive progress. That which I think, I become. The might of my thoughts determines that. I learn, lead, guide, and govern myself, and I adapt to all things, situations, surroundings, and circumstances. Therefore, I am pleased about my equalized composure, joy, love, freedom, and harmony. I have great respect for myself, and indeed in all modesty and righteousness, without thinking of myself as something special. And in this state I am able to be pleased about the equalized composure, joy, love, freedom, peace, gladness, calmness, and harmony of others, and I recognize and accept that very much can be learned from many other human beings, and that they can also be relied upon. The more calm, peaceful, joyous, loving, free, and harmoniously equalized I become, the more comprehensive my potential for thoughts become. Indeed, also creativity and constructiveness grow with it to the same degree whereby the might of the thoughts continually accumulate by means of which imaginations, wishes, and efforts are then brought to fruition. The might of my thoughts become the might of the action and the might of the creativity and constructiveness. I develop a greater and better self-control, composure, and cheerfulness, and allow the creational nature in myself to come to the fore. My own inner progress in the matter of character, morality, disposition, and personality quickly takes on forms on their own accord, are evolutely effective, and strive for that which is higher. Consequently, its success cannot fail to occur. I always remain calm, friendly, cheerful, and equalized. All necessary changes I carry out myself. I create my own salvation myself from my own thoughts, and their might as well as through my feelings, acts, and deeds, and according to how I confront the obligation of my responsibility and live and manage my life in accord with this. All that which pertains to the joy, the peace, the love, the freedom, the fairness, the righteousness, the humanness, of the knowledge, the wisdom, and the equalized harmony is concentrated in my cheerfulness. I think clearly and consciously while I create, by means of the might of my thoughts, all that leads to peace, freedom, gladness, love, knowledge, and wisdom. I am an optimist, and I always strive in a creative and construction-wise to maintain a good optimism, and not thereby lose my conviction about a good end. 238. My craftiness consists of the operation of right, healthy, progressive, and positive thoughts, and the use of their might in all matters of my development, with which the achievement of a healthy optimism also belongs. My good, healthy, and positive craftiness also include perseverance and firmness, as well as persistence and necessary flexibility, which are of immense significance for progress and self-realization. Even under great pressure, I remain consciously hopeful and happy, and in defiance of all blows, breakdowns, and deplorable states of affairs, I always retain the upper hand and the sense, and the conviction for that which is good and that which is the best. I trust my own potential, and it is my inescapable obligation so that I am able to use my own power as I progress and therefore also evolve. I am full of inner persistence because I use the powers of my consciousness, and with that also the powers of my thoughts for the further education, for the learning, and for the creation of knowledge, which thereby have an evolutive effect in themselves. I create strong inner persistence, and I stand in every regard with both feet on the hard ground of the real life. Criticism is not pleasant for me, but I can deal with it and accept it in the understanding that I can learn from it. Criticism is a fact of further progress. I quite thoroughly think about every criticism which is made about me or about my deeds and actions and opinions and what they say, and I carefully draw from that everything which I recognize to be useful and evolutive, and which can be useful for my searching and my efforts towards that which is higher. Any criticism that is wrong, I pick out and simply set aside as a waste product so that it cannot cause any harm. I use each criticism for the progress, indeed even when it does not exactly give cause for the joy. 250 Inner perseverance and persistence, as well as power of resistance I develop and integrate into the might of my thoughts, so the created ideal can be realized by means of these thoughts.